Oh, cool, that bit hadn't gone live yet. Well, push this back. And this is still not going to work. Is there something I can stand on? That'll make it more obvious. Probably not. The pitfalls of recording on an iPad, I guess. Yeah, there really isn't anything. Maybe this. Nah. I just wanted to prove that my hips don't lie, that I don't know if I can do it safely. So. Have a look at some of my spastic dancing. Whoop. Alright. That's enough of that shit. Let's dispense with the theatrics, shall we? No, we can't. I'm sorry. As you can probably tell by now, I'm nowhere near as good a dancer as Shakira, and I'm definitely not as sexy. You want to chase your pink pig? Well, you get what you give. So, gonna go in a bit of a different direction now. Since, it's been almost 3 full weeks since I've started doing this video series. Man, I'm really out of fucking shape. Do some dancing for 30 seconds. It's not even TikTok worthy. I'm trying to catch my fucking breath. So hopefully this will get stronger as we go along, because damn, that actually really sucked. So, some of you may know Dark Entries. They're a mortuary worker slash blogger. You know, you can read about their life on their blog. I think they're she, but I don't want to assume pronouns. I think there's a reference to one of their co-workers calling her girl, so I guess that's fine. Dark Entries, if you see this, feel free to correct me, because I'm a big dum-dum head. Anyways, let's begin with Dark Entry 1. And before I forget, 2 things. That silly dance was dedicated to Marty and Elle because y'all challenged me to do it. And I'm going to at least read part of the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot. So, that'll come later. Dark Entry number 1, 2/12/2021. Today, my first call came in right before 10 a.m. If you can hear that in the background, it's because I'm running my laundry machine. My co-worker Ben and I were dispatched to a residence where an elderly man had passed away. Our company always sends at least 2 people to residential calls. More if the deceased is on the heavier side. Our office staff lets you know the address as well as the names and phone numbers of people present at the scene, so you can call them and give them an ETA. I typed the address the office had texted me into Google Maps. Even though it was only 20 minutes away, I intended to call the family and give them an ETA of at least 35 minutes. because the weather was starting to worsen. Yesterday's freezing rain and snow had already made the roads fairly slick for my morning commute, and the constant bombardment of the same mixed day was making the thought of travel pretty anxiety provoking. I called the wife of the decedent to let her know that Ben and I were on our way and would be arriving in about 35 to 45 minutes. An automated message informed me that the phone number had been disconnected. Checking the text from the office again, I noticed that another relative has been listed as an ETA contact, a cousin of the deceased. So I called the cousin, but the phone went straight to voicemail. While a little unusual, this isn't too uncommon. Lots of people just can't deal with phone calls, or other people in general, when they're grieving. After leaving a message, I left my toasty apartment and started warming up my work van. Even though it had been driven just an hour ago, a stubborn layer of ice coated the windshield and windows. Normally, I would take care of the paperwork we're required to do for each case while cranking my defrost, but this time, Ben took care of that. When enough ice had melted, I began my treacherous journey. The residence was not visible from the street. I double-checked the address, number 2520. It had to be here. Pulling up further, I see Ben's van, also slowly cruising up the street looking for the residence. We both pull over and park to text each other because clearly neither of us has any clue where this house is. The snow is barreling down from the sky, making it nearly impossible to see. We both decide to get out and look for the residence on foot, which would have been easier than driving up and down the steps, trying not to slide into all the parked cars. Finally, we spotted a long, narrow driveway between two houses. I walked down to the end, shielding my face from the stinging shards of freezing rain with a numb hand. At the end of the driveway were about 4 or 5 cars parked haphazardly in the middle of an unkempt front yard, strewn with debris and random objects, all covered with several inches of snow and ice. Behind the chaos was house number 2520. I walked back to my van, let Ben know that this was the place, and carefully backed into the driveway. We rang the doorbell. A young man answered the door. We introduced ourselves on behalf of the funeral home chosen by the family. The man mumbled something totally incoherent, his eyes heavily glazed. "Hi, we're from the funeral home. Where would be a good place to go over some questions with you?" He mumbled something again, barely able to keep his eyes open. At this point, it was pretty clear that he was under the influence of some kind of opiate. All I was able to catch out of his mumbling was the word cousin. So I asked him if he was the cousin the office told us about and if he would be able to answer some questions about his relative. He started mumbling again, motioned for us to come inside, and led us through the house down a narrow hallway. My eagerness to escape the cold quickly turned to an intense longing to be back outside. Immediately upon entering, a sour, thick smell assaulted my nose. The carpet was dirty and heavily stained. Following the cousin, we passed through the living room, where a young woman with pink hair was sitting on the couch, crying next to 2 children playing video games, seemingly oblivious to the chaos unfolding around them. The young woman looks almost as high as the cousin. I spot a syringe on an end table and have my suspicions confirmed. In a cramped bedroom at the end of the narrow hallway lay an elderly man in an adjustable hospital-style bed. Sorry, Wicket. Mouth and eyes wide open, clearly deceased. Sitting next to him in a wheelchair is a long-haired woman who introduced himself as his wife. "Are you his next of kin?" I asked. "Yes, I think so," she said, barely able to spit her words out. She started crying. "Sorry, I don't know if I can keep it together." "It's okay if you can't. This is a difficult time for you and your family," I said. "Actually, can you put his brother down instead? Is this for making funeral arrangements and stuff? Yeah, I'd rather his brother took care of that stuff." "That's fine, we can do that. What is his brother's name?" "Beans," she croaked, or at least that's what it sounded like. "Beg pardon? What was that?" bins. Still unsure of what she said, I used the phrase I always pull out of my pocket to get me out of uncomfortable situations like this. Okay, how do you spell that? I have no idea. She starts going through her wallet, pulling out seemingly random receipts and small scraps of paper and going through them. I think it's written here somewhere. This goes on for an uncomfortable minute or two, which may not seem like much, but at the time it felt like an awkward eternity. So I asked if she had his phone number. Oh yeah, I have it right here, she said, scrolling through the contacts on her phone, which made me wonder what name she had used to save the brother in her phone as a contact. One thing I have learned from this job is that grief definitely has a disorienting effect on people. It can be difficult or even impossible for a grieving person to remember even simple details. I see it every day, but this lady was definitely intoxicated. After we finished our paperwork, we headed back out to the van to get a transport cot. They look pretty similar to the ones EMTs use, only ours have a cover that zips over them so no passersby get freaked out by seeing a dead person. Ben and I discussed strategy. We'll try to bring the cot into the bedroom if it will fit, move the bed closer to the wall, scoot the cot up to the side of the bed, then slide the deceased from the bed to the cot. The snow has already gotten worse in the short time we've been at the residence. The snowflakes are mingled with ice, and it feels like icy sand is stinging my exposed face and hands. We have to lift the cot up to carry it so we don't track snow through the house. It is a struggle to navigate the cot through such a tiny space with a narrow hallway and so many tight corners. We carefully wheel it past the kids playing video games down to the end of the hallway, where we discover that the room we are trying to enter is full of people. The cousin, the pink-haired woman, the wife in the wheelchair, plus several other people I hadn't seen before, are all crowded into the bedroom, which was 9 foot by 9 foot at best. Before we even have a chance to back up to let people out, everyone but the wife hurriedly squeezes past us. After a 12-point turn that involved temporarily trapping myself in a corner, we were finally able to maneuver the cot into the bedroom. We execute our game plan by moving the bed against the wall and scooting the cot up next to it. We unzip the cover of our cot, unfold a white plastic shroud, a body bag, and fit it over the top. Then we attach an ID tag to his ankle with a zip tie. Using our knees to firmly brace the cot against the bed, I grab the lower half of the deceased's body and Ben takes the upper half. Then, on the count of 3, we grab him toward us and gently transfer him to the cot. We loosely wrap him in the plastic shroud, leaving his face exposed. Then we firmly strap him into place using what are essentially 2 seat belts, one around his upper abdomen and another around his lower legs. Then we zip him up into the cot cover. The final touch is a small floral print quilt that goes over the top. We ask the wife if she would like a few last moments with her husband. She says she has already said her goodbyes. This is the part of the job that is the hardest for me, the goodbyes part. It took a few weeks for me to learn how to not cry. After doing this job for a while, I've definitely gotten better at it, but there are still moments that leave me sobbing in my van once I'm on the road and out of sight of the family. It's a sort of catch-22. In order to be successful in this industry, you have to be a very empathetic person, but that empathy can also make it difficult to do your job. I honestly couldn't imagine what it would be like to see someone I love wrapped up in plastic to be taken away from me forever. And I do it every day, multiple times a day. I am reminded of one of my first calls. Another deceased elderly man survived by his wife. They were a Chinese couple, and the woman spoke no English. She was communicating through 2 elders from her church, who were at her residence when I arrived. The woman was crying and praying by her husband's side. She asked where we were taking him, and we told her we were taking him to the coolers at our mortuary. She sobbed even harder and went and brought us a coat to dress him in. So he won't be cold, her translators told us. We wrapped him up on the cot, and she followed us, crying and praying in Chinese. She grabbed my arm and frantically tried to tell me something we both knew I wouldn't understand, until one of the church elders gently touched her shoulder. Looking around their apartment, I saw many framed pictures of the two of them together. Happy and smiling vacation photos, pictures of them together outside at a restaurant, but there were no pictures of any children, and our office hadn't told us of any children that could potentially be next of kin. I've had a feeling I was taking away the only person that separated this lady from being completely alone in this world, in a country where she didn't even know the language. She followed me outside as I was loading him into my van, wailing for her beloved dead husband. As I drove away, she followed my van through the parking lot. I could see her tiny figure getting smaller and smaller in my rearview mirror, but I could still hear her sobs ringing in my ears as I left the neighborhood. Back at the trap house, Ben and I are navigating the cot with the deceased on board out of the tiny bedroom and back through the living room. I guess we were blocking the TV with the dead man because one of the kids on the couch shouted, "Move!" at us. It just seemed unreal, the sheer inappropriateness. I just couldn't believe it. We finally get outside and the weather is just unbelievably shitty. The mix of snow and freezing rain is getting to be unbearable. But we're done. All we have to do is load up the deceased and we will be out of this sketchy neighborhood and on our way to the funeral home. But the back door of the van won't open. It's frozen shut. In the short time since we removed the cot, the back door of the van has totally iced over. So, we are stuck outside in the shittiest weather ever with a dead guy. I climbed into the back of the van through the side door and pushed the back gate through the inside while Ben pulled from the outside. It wouldn't budge. Ben and I ended up moving my van out into the street, backing his van into the driveway instead, pulling one of his empty cots out to make room for the one with the deceased on it, then putting his empty cot into my van through the side door. This whole process took an extra 20 minutes, in the freezing cold, outside in an unsafe neighborhood. Finally leaving that house was the second most relieving thing that happened to me that day. The most relieving thing was getting home safely later that night. That's the end of this first entry. I can't remember if I gave 2 kudos to it, so... I did not. Well, there we go. 28 kudos now. Alright, hold please while I transfer you to Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot, as delivered by poetryfoundation.org. First, a brief interlude in which we check our Space Hay comments again. Oh man, it's 4 o'clock. When did that happen? Why is there always part of my screen that is dirty? No matter how often I polish it. It's probably a side effect of Space Hay Instant Messenger being in beta mode, but I guess it always loads kind of slowly. Is that the same for everybody, or is it just me? Okay. It's time for the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. And I wish that all the peaches we had hadn't gone soft and too mushy to eat, because that would have been a fantastic joke to just be like eating a peach as I read this. But, alright, let's do the damn thing. The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot. Se io credesse che mia risposta fosse a persona che mai tornasse al mondo, questa fiamma staria senza più scossa, ma per gli occhi giammi di questo fondo non tornano viva alcun chiodo il vero, senza tema di infamia te rispondo. I think my Italian is better than my French. Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky. Like a patient etherized upon a table, Let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless nights and one-night cheap hotels and sawdust restaurants with oyster shells. Streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent, to lead you to an overwhelming question. Oh, do not ask, what is it? Let us go and make our visit. In the room, the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. The yellow fog that rubs its back upon the window panes, the yellow smoke that rubs its muzzle on the window panes, licked its tongue into the corners of the evening, lingered upon the pools that stand in drains, let fall upon its back the soot that falls from chimneys, slipped by the terrace, made a sudden leap, and seeing that it was a soft October night, curled once about the house and fell asleep. Why does my back hurt? And indeed, there will be time for the yellow smoke that slides along the street, rubbing its back upon the window panes. There will be time to prepare a face to meet the faces that you meet. There will be a time to murder and create, and time for all the works and days of hands that lift and drop a question on your plate. Time for you and time for me, and time yet for 100 indecisions, and for 100 visions and revisions before the taking of a toast and tea. In the room, the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. And indeed, there will be time to wonder, do I dare? And do I dare? Time to turn back and descend the stair, with a bald spot in the middle of my hair. They will say, how his hair is growing thin. My morning coat, my collar mounting firmly to the chin, my necktie rich and modest, but asserted by a simple pin. They will say, but how his arms and legs are thin. Do I dare disturb the universe? In a minute there's time for decisions and revisions which a minute will reverse. For I have known them all already, known them all, have known the evenings, mornings, afternoons. I have measured out my life with coffee spoons. As you do. I know the voice is dying with a dying fall beneath the music from a farther room. So, how should I presume? So it goes. And I have known the eyes already, known them all, the eyes that fix you in a formulated phrase. And when I am formulated, sprawling on a pen, when I am pinned and wriggling on the wall, then how should I begin to spit out all the butt ends of my days and ways, and how should I presume? And I have known the arms already, known them all, arms that are braceleted and white and bare, but in the lamplight down with light brown hair. Is a perfume from a dress that makes me so digress? Arms that lie along a table or wrap about a shawl, and how should I then presume, and how should I begin? Shall I say I have gone at dusk through narrow streets, and watched the smoke that rises from the pipes of lonely men in shirt sleeves leaning out of window? I should have been a pair of ragged claws scuttling across the floors of silent seas. And the afternoon, the evening, sleeps so peacefully, smoothed by long fingers. Asleep, tired, or it malingers, stretched on the floor here beside you and me, should I, after tea and cakes and ices, have the strength to force the moment to its crisis? But though I have wept and fasted, wept and prayed, though I have seen my head, grown slightly bald, brought in upon a platter, I am no prophet, and here's no great matter. I have seen the moment of my greatness flicker, and I have seen the eternal footman hold my coat and snicker. In short, I was afraid. And would it have been worth it, after all, after the cups, the marmalade, the tea, among the porcelain, among some talk of you and me, would it have been worthwhile to have bitten off the matter with a smile? To have squeezed the universe into a ball, to roll it towards some overwhelming question, to say, I am Lazarus, come from the dead, come back to tell you all. I shall tell you all, if one settling a pillow by her head should say, that is not what I meant at all, that is not it at all. And would it have been worth it, after all? Would it have been worthwhile, after the sunsets and the dooryards and the sprinkled streets, after the novels, after the teacups, after the skirts that trail along the floor? And this, and so much more. Is it impossible to say just what I mean? But is but as if a magic lantern threw the nerves and patterns on a screen, would it have been worthwhile? If one, settling a pillow or throwing off a shawl and turning toward the window, should say, "That is not it at all. That is not what I meant at all." No, I am not Prince Hamlet, nor was meant to be. Am an attendant lord, one that will do, to swell a progress, start a scene or two. Advise the prince, no doubt, an easy tool, deferential, glad to be of use, politic, cautious, meticulous, full of high sentence but a bit obtuse, at times indeed almost ridiculous, almost at times the fool. I grow old, I grow old, I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled. Shall I part my hair behind? Do I dare to eat a peach? I shall wear white flannel trousers and walk upon the beach. I have heard the mermaids singing, each to each. I do not think that they will sing to me. I have seen them riding seaward on the waves, combing the white hair of the waves blown back. When the wind blows the water white and black, we have lingered in the chambers of the sea, by sea-girls wreathed with seaweed red and brown, till human voices wake us, and we drown. So that was pretty epic. I hope my performance of it pleased you. And let's refresh Space Hay again, see what's new. Oh, hi, Sapphire. And I'll read one more thing for y'all. It's gonna be another piece of Quest for Relics. I know I stopped posting it to my blog, and I'll probably start doing it again. But first, a brief recess. shit. Man, I hope that rescuer helps my back. Probably did something to throw it out. Don't turn 32, y'all. It's a trap. Let's see. To my blog. Your blog. Ooh, new bulletin cards. Mixing. Ah yes, Slayer's Mind Games. Posted about a month ago. Content warning, trigger warning. No kudos. Quest for the relics and attack 2. So that's where we left off. Begun March 11th, 2020. Finished to be announced. Latest update 2/23/21. Yeah, that's not really true. And let's see. 5/25/21. 6/23/21. So this is an attack 2. Just go over those. Kennedy. Marinette. Interlude. Sound effect 2. This is Allegra 2. Alright, so let's read this next chapter. Allegra. It was with heavy hearts that the crew traveled in the direction of where Absalon was thought to be. After so many years, its exact location had become a bit of a myth. The trek was overland, since in his superstition Cisco thought it was best not to travel by ship. There was a definite pall in the air. Lord and Lady Palomo had loaned the group fresh horses. Although devastated by the loss of their daughter's bodyguard and terrified to see her leave the safety of their little haven, Reese and Abeja had little choice but to let her go and join the rest of the crew on the next phase of their adventure. What email did I get? So many emails I really didn't care about. Oh, look, 42 minutes is the meaning of life. This might close in on my first hour-long video that, yeah, the live stream didn't even get that far. It was like 47 minutes. Allegra didn't say much as they left the aviary behind. Given her sheltered upbringing, this was her first experience of life that wasn't comfortable as befitting a princess of the realm. The upbeat mood that had accompanied them from Freehaven dissipated. Javier tried cracking a few feeble jokes for the sake of levity, but they didn't go over well since no one felt like laughing. Several hours after they had left safety behind, a light drizzle began to fall. Though they had all bundled up in cloaks, Allegra suggested they stop and make camp to rest around a campfire. Matthias managed to hunt down enough rabbits for a hearty stew once it was combined with ingredients they had brought with them from the castle. Go away, Dell Command updates. The next few days passed by much the same way. Finally, one morning, as the last of the dawn's mist burned away, they beheld the ruined gates of what must have been the lost city of Absalom. Allegra asked for the map, and Javier handed it over. The map had changed, almost as if it had been enchanted, and was waiting for the right bearer to start revealing its secrets. An X was overlaid where they must be standing, so they had arrived at their destination. A familiar, boisterous, and roaring voice greeted them. "About time, Outlanders! Slow going, eh?" Kamui approached them, his fist weapons equipped, and a massive sword strapped to his back, which gleamed of star metal. Allegra recognized it at once as a blade made from immortal steel. Despite its apparent age, it hadn't lost its sharpness or brightness. Together, they approached the gates. Some sort of residual magic kept them standing in their faded grandeur. Javier shivered at the sight of them. "Something Milady Duchess let slip is that her family came from Absalom. She's the last of the Zamoras, but she also said they had something to do with the city falling into ruin." His sentence was cut off by a bout of panic belching. Nobody mocked him for this. They all felt a vague sense of unease, as if the abandoned city cast an aura of fear from just being beheld. Hefting their weapons, they approached the gates, which still seemed to be inlaid with predecessor magic. Sigils woven around the gates lit up, and a structure warped into existence before their eyes. Kamui bellowed with laughter, startling everyone else. "A rune spire! We have these in my homeland!" At that, he gave a great, wordless war cry. A red eye inside the spire flickered in and out, as though accepting the password. The spire sank back into the ground, and with a metallic screech, the gates opened to admit them. The dead city was just as terrifying once they were inside its gates. A murmur of ghosts could be heard on the wailing wind, and tumbleweeds of ash fluttered like paper birds that rustled ominously as they blew by. "What happened here?" Javier said, his teeth chattering. Doom, Xanathax said. At the archives of Doneth, there's a room dedicated to the nightmare at Upsilon and all its mysteries. If the rumors about Alisette's tomb being here are true, then we had best stay alert. The archives spoke of a relic called the Alchemist's Puzzle Box, but we're not the only ones to know about it, and I dare say we won't be the only ones looking to find it. I don't much like the sound of that, Javier whispered. Allegra patted him on the shoulder. Don't worry, Javi. You'll have me to protect you. She winked towards the sword strapped to her back, the sword she'd been given by Robitus. Xanathax slammed his quarterstaff against the ground, and one end of it lit up, as befitting a wizard's staff. Let's go, he said, trying to keep the fear out of his voice. Before they could move 5 paces, a flurry of motion caught them by surprise. Everyone readied their weapons except for Javier, who clutched his lute. We'll have to find you a weapon soon, Matthias said, cracking a grin in the bard's direction. Sure thing, mate, if I live long enough. A stranger in scarlet robes approached them. Their robes fluttered in the wind, and the cowl of the hood hid the person's features from them, if indeed it was a person and not a vengeful ghoul. Greetings, the figure said. It's been a while since I've seen a human face, or 7. The figure lowered the hood of its robes to reveal a woman with long brown hair, luminous silver eyes, and an aquiline nose. She smiled at them, although there was something unsettling behind her expression, almost like a shark's. My name is Datara. Although the others visibly relaxed, Allura could tell that Xanathax kept his guard up. Anyone particularly friendly in this husk of a city had to be a potential ally that could help see them through their excursion here, but that could also be a threat. Datura shouldered her wicked-looking spear. I'm a scavenger here, but I know the way to a nearby treasure vault. Let me show you. It sounded too good to be true, Allegra thought, and it probably was. Nevertheless, she followed along with everyone else, although there was a definite sense of foreboding. A frisson of fear escaped her lips, but everyone was too wrapped up in their own thoughts to notice. She noticed that Xanathax and Kamui were frowning. While Xanathax sped up to speak with Matthias and Cisco, who were in front of the group, Kamui grunted and fell to the back, muttering something about covering their rear. He still had not explained how he had found them, but she chalked it up to mysterious mountain druidic magic. Within minutes, or so it seemed, Datura led them to the vault that was their destination. She approached the heavy iron gates inlaid with lapis lazuli and uttered a command word that sounded like another password. It must have been because a moment or two later the gates opened. The old metal clanked as it moved, as if in protest. Datura gestured for them to follow once the doors were open all the way. Allegra couldn't suppress a shiver. She had read of a situation like this in the library back home. She reached out a hand to Marinelle, who took it with a warm smile at her. Robitus, walking in front of both of them, turned round momentarily. He saw the 2 women holding hands, and Allegra swore she detected a flicker of jealousy in his eyes, even though the elves were not fond of outward displays of affection. It seemed odd that they hadn't encountered bandits, thieves, or monsters. It was almost as if this vault had been cleared out. Whatever artifact they were now seeking, getting to it seemed to be entirely too easy. Off in the distance, she could see a plinth illuminated by an eerie blue light. On the plinth was a cube. It seemed ordinary, but had a power radiating that even from this far away, Allegra could feel it. They all approached the plinth, where the light increased in intensity. Allegra beheld the cube. It looked like it was made of bronze and stormwood, a rare magical type of wood that only prospered on the Cobalt Isles. I had to fight for months to find this vault. Even after bribing, scheming, and intimidating contacts back in Freehaven, I still couldn't find it. Until now. No one reacted to Datura's words. They were all too transfixed by the light around the cube and the quiet power humming from it. Now that I'm here, I must thank you for helping me find it, Datura said, almost too quietly to be heard. She reached out for it, but her hands were shocked and she was thrown backwards. The cube had rejected her, almost as if it could sense someone unworthy of it. Panting, Datura got back to her feet and pointed at the cube. Well then, it seems one of you must retrieve it. I nominate her. She tilted her head towards Marinelle, who recoiled as if the cube's protective field had also shocked her just by the very thought of it. Now hang about, Javier interjected. I've the bally map that led us to this blighted place to begin with. It's only fair that I grab the bloody box. This is no mere cube, Datura hissed. It is the alchemist puzzle box, and its power is legend. Allura gasped. Why did I... wow. Must have been thinking of a different character that time. Allegra gasped. She had read about this item after all. It was one of the relics of Alisat, but not described in the last will and testament of Zendri and Alisat. No, she had come across it in a tale she had read about the Zamoran heresy and the nightmare at Absalom. They weren't in a treasure vault. They were in the hidden tomb of Alisat. We shouldn't be here, Allegra said. The sanctity of this place has been fouled. Not by us, I should hope, Javier exclaimed, his ridiculous hat almost doing a somersault off of his head. No, Marinelle said, strangely serene. Not us. She reached out to touch the puzzle box, and the force field shielding it dissipated. She retrieved the cube from its resting place. Well done, Datura rasped. Now, slowly, turn around and give that to me. Allegra stifled a scream of surprise. Datura had leveled her spear between Marinelle's shoulder blades. As one, the others in the party drew their weapons. Javier reached for his lute. One more step, and I skewer the oracle, Datura warned, so that no one dared spring at her. Datura leaned forward and licked the back of Marinelle's neck. By the blood horizon, your fear, sweetling. It's intoxicating. Robita swore in Elvish and fired an arrow at Datura, who flicked it aside with her spear. Matthias and Cisco attacked with their swords, but Datura swept Matthias's leg out from under him in one smooth motion of her spear and brought the hat swinging back around to clobber Cisco in the back of the head. The pirate crumpled like a house of cards tumbling down. Datura landed a swift kick to Matthias's ribs to keep him down. Javier was the next to jump into the fray, but Datura made a forceful shoving motion with her hand and blasted him backward effortlessly. Javi's lute spun out of his hands to shatter against the closest wall. Robita's, cursing under his breath, set another arrow to his bow, his hand clenched around the fade-out. If you harm the oracle, I will put this arrow through your eye. You can certainly try, Datura smirked. Robita's fired the arrow, heedless of this warning. Datura caught it and threw it back at him, and Hisatsunum's sharpshooter wasn't quick enough to dodge. The arrow lodged in his eye, and he went down, yelling in pain. Roaring, Kamui leapt forwards with a gigantic striding motion. Datura ducked and deeked around his fist-weapon-loaded punches, slithering under his guard and giving him an uppercut that sent him flying off the plinth. Allegra had seen enough. She unsheathed the Serenity, which now glowed with a blue light identical to the shield that had been around the puzzle box. Mari, take the box and go. Datura licked her lips. Ah, Princess Allegra. I reckon your fear will taste even sweeter than the oracle's. I was sent here with orders to kill her, but I will satisfy myself with you. Come up with some new material, bitch. Cackling, Datura threw herself forward with her spear extended. Allegra sidestepped and sliced downwards with her immortal steel sword. Datura's laughter turned to a howl of rage. She stopped short, glaring at her ruined weapon. So it appears I have been thwarted. But only for now. With a blinding flash of magic powder, she vanished, her insane laughter echoing off the ancient walls of the tomb. One by one, each member of the party began to recover from the fight. Javier was groaning as he clutched his head and looked at the smashed-up pieces of his loot. Kamui was trying to dislodge the arrow from Robida's eye. Matthias coughed up blood as he stood and attempted to revive Cisco. Come on, Cisco, wake the fuck up! Allegra found Marinelle hiding behind one of the pillars inside the chamber where the fight with Datura had happened. She hadn't been able to get out in time. Relieved, the two women caught each other up in a tight embrace. Cisco wobbled as he got to his feet. Let's get out of here. Javi, check the map, mate. Javier... what the... Oh, Cisco... Whoops. Cisco wobbled as he got to his feet. Let's get the hell out of here. Javi, check the map, mate. Javier looked at the map, but he shook his head and handed it to Marinelle. The map points us to Mardunra. That's where we should go next. And that's the end of the chapter. Here's Interlude 2, which is called Tales from Angvir, Aldwin the Behemoth. On the way to Mardunra, Kamui has a story to tell, but that's a tale for another time since this has gone almost an hour. So, peace out.